As free agency draws nearer, it's time to start thinking a little less responsibly. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. We are dreaming big. The Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. My hashtag everydayers who come listen to the show every single day. My name is Luke. I will be your host. And it is Tuesday. And that means that we are going to, it's a Town Hall Tuesday. Somebody, Skip Drew, thank you for that suggestion. I like it. Skip Drew says Town Hall Tuesdays. I think that's the one. I think Town Hall Tuesdays is it. So welcome to Town Hall Tuesdays here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. I've actually got a little bit of an idea for how to spice up our Town Hall Tuesdays moving forward as well. We're going to try something a little like that maybe next week, if I don't forget, which I could. You never know what's going to happen. But this is where I answer your questions as submitted to me via Blue Sky, which you can find me at Luke Braun NFL. You can send me a message there, I'm pretty sure, if you want, or you can send me an email anytime at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. Or if you want to submit questions, you can submit them to the Google form in the show notes as well, in the description to any podcast episode. You can find it there. The first question that I'm going to take comes from Sketch Conk, who asks, what is the path to keeping Bynum and Murphy, and are you interested? So I figured this is a good excuse to quickly follow up on what I talked about yesterday, because I was pretty, you could tell, I think, that I was a little confused. We got a little bit of clarity from Over the Cap. So what has happened with Sam Darnold, Stephon Gilmore, and Byron Murphy? Those are the contracts. It was going to be Aaron Jones. He moved the date back. The other three did not. So it's those three guys. The situation is that their contract void dates have now expired. They have voided. That doesn't mean that they're terminated, but it means that they will terminate at the end of the league year when everybody else terminates. And it basically, from here on out, works just like any other expiring contract. So Pat Jones and Byron Murphy, now the same rules apply to them in terms of compensatory picks, in terms of how they count toward how they count toward like dead cap or whatever. All of it is compensatory picks in terms of like when they can sign, who can talk to them. All of those same rules are going to apply to everybody. So the Vikings can extend Cam Bynum just as easily as they can extend Byron Murphy or Sam Darnold. All of those things are all of those options are still available to them. That's my understanding now. And if you go to overthecap.com right now and you look up Sam Darnold's contract, you will see that it is now listed as a 1-year deal that expired with dead cap on the end of it, which is all that is. So between the three of those contracts, the Vikings are taking like 11, 12 mil in dead cap because of the void year stuff that they did. And that's them paying off the rest of those debts, and those guys are scheduled to become free agents. The difference between now and 2 days ago is now, let's say the Vikings do turn around and make an offer to Sam Darnold that he takes, and they extend him. The void years that were on the contract before no longer like prorate the signing bonus out. It doesn't spread out the same way, and they'll have to structure the contract completely custom. So for me, I don't think it's super likely that the Vikings wanted to wait till after the void date expired to extend one of these guys. Both because it doesn't match the reporting that we've heard, but also it's just more efficient to do it when the void years are already on the deal. Now, I mean, I guess you could sign a new deal with other void years, and like remake them, but why would you just like have a bunch of cap accelerate into your face for no reason, right? When you could have done this 3 days ago. So I think it's fair to look at that action or inaction and say that means that the Vikings did not enter the offseason with an intention to extend either one of those three guys. And that would entail that they're going to let him walk, right? But, big old but, They have almost a month to change their minds. Now, I don't know what could happen between now and then to make them change their minds. Maybe the draft class at corner, they're going to go to the combine and hate it all more than they thought. And they went, maybe let's go back to Byron Murphy, or maybe Byron Murphy will find out. We'll talk to people. His agent will talk to people at the combine, and the market won't be quite what he thought. So he'll go, make a different decision. Maybe something changes. But it would require something to change. And not only would it require something to change, where both sides are going to have to be more motivated than they would have had to been last week. Last week, they had to be this motivated to get a deal done. But now it's that much harder, and they have to be even more motivated than that. And they have to have a reason, even though no football will be played. Byron Murphy will do nothing more to demonstrate his value. Any communication has already happened. So it feels to me like it's a signal that they're going to let him walk when you let the void date happen. It's not a guarantee. Things could change, but things have to drastically change for it to work that way now. To answer the question about SketchConk, I want to do that quick aside, but to answer SketchConk's question, what's the path to keeping Bynum and Murphy, and are you interested? Yes, I'm big time interested. I would love to. The path is to pay both guys. If you want to use the PFF amounts, Byron Murphy is looking at 17 mil. Bynum's looking at 14.5 mil. Pay them that. Yep. And I would super do that. It doesn't have to be complicated. JV Swaps asks, what are your favorite irresponsible free agent or trade targets for this offseason? A lot of the trade targets are quarterbacks. When you look at lists of who's out there for trade, it's a lot of quarterbacks, and it's a lot of people with weird contract situations, or wide receivers like T. Higgins and Deebo Samuel type situations. And it's tough because the Vikings do have a lot of money. So I don't know if there is an irresponsible free agent target. I don't know. Go get, I guess if you went out and spent a bunch of money on T. Higgins and then let your cornerback room die, you'd probably call that a mismanagement of resources. But I don't know, it would also kind of rule. I'm not that mad. Irresponsible trade target, Ja'Marr Chase. It's happening, Bengals fans. You were too annoying about this for too long. Sorry, I'm going to push it. Ja'Marr Chase is my ambitious trade target. Look, he's going to want to be on a team that can consistently make the playoffs. All right. Cincinnati's flyover country. The window there is closed. He knows it. He's going to want to go play with his buddy. You see how often they tag each other on Instagram? That's evidence of a trade now. We did that for long enough with Justin Jefferson, and you have a contract issue. Deal with it. For a more serious answer, I don't know. Is Trey Smith an irresponsible idea? I think that Trey Smith, I would want to watch him. I would want to really pay attention to him. And so I'll stay out of the is he actually worth the money that he is, and I'll simply point to the trend that the most expensive guard on the market is very rarely worth it. But those are different guys than Trey Smith. What happened with Andrew Norwell has nothing to do with Trey Smith. Different guy, different habits, different mom. It's different guy. So if the Vikings do end up signing him, I'll watch him. If not, I'll never give it another thought. Maybe Javon Holland? But they need a safety. So, okay. If they don't bring back Cam Bynum and they spend that money on Javon Holland instead, okay. Sure. So I don't know what would an edge rusher or trading for Myles Garrett, is that a cool irresponsible trade target? But those things all sound like they rule. Yeah, that's a crazy redundancy, but it's Myles Garrett. You'll figure it out for him. He's good enough. Let's get a little bit more concrete and take one from Jube, I don't know, who asks, what is your ideal offseason solution to our interior O-line problem? My ideal O-line plan is maybe the way I'll put it, is probably less drastic than you want. I think a lot of people want the Vikings to fire all three guys on the interior, or four guys that played all three, Ed Ingram, Dalton Risner, Blake Brandel, Garrett Bradbury. Cut them all. Get them out of here. And then replace them with, Trey Smith and Drew Dalman and Tyler Booker in the first round. Boom, did it. Offensive line. That's not going to happen. I get it. That's the Madden thing you want to do. It's not going to happen. Don't get your hopes up for it. I do think that making one big swing on the O-line would be pretty fun. But I think this O-line is a lot closer than it gets credit for. It wasn't without its issues, but it wasn't. I mean, come on. We all watched the Matt Khalil, TJ Clemmings year. Okay, we saw it. We saw Dakota Dozier. We watched the Drew Samia disaster. Like, we have seen so much worse than this, like, recently. And I think if you get a good guard, like a true, anchor of this is the guy on the line guard, and you put him at right guard, you get a good one at right guard, whether that's Trey Smith or Tyler Booker or whatever, I think you could probably run back Bradbury and Brandel and not feel bad about it. As long as you get an okay left tackle in the meantime, while we wait for Darrisaw to come back from his injury. For me, I think a first-round guard would be pretty sweet. I would be pretty into that. And if they didn't really do anything else on O-line with like the money that they have because they've got other things to do, I would understand. If they just said, okay, let's, first-round pick on a guard, and we'll use the money to fix our secondary, and we'll use money to fix the interior of our D-line and do the quarterback thing and bring back Aaron Jones and all that stuff. And they did free agency for everything else. And then you went, okay, how are you improving on the O-line? And they said, well, here is Tyler Booker. I'd be like, okay, that plan makes total sense to me. I'm in, I'm game. When's week 1? Next up, you guys had some really interesting and challenging questions for me. So I'm going to do my best with those, plus a little couple more personal ones, because that's what we do here on Town Hall Tuesdays on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Moving right along here on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. There's no better place to get in on all the action than at FanDuel. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout any game. Basketball, hockey, UFL, closer than you think. Go Battlehawks. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or the face-off and you want to bet on like a late comeback or something like that, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can always throw everything together into a big, giant same-game parlay. I know everybody loves to do that so much. So right now, whether you're betting big or betting small, start with a $5 bet. Because if you go to FanDuel.com, join today, and place one $5 bet on whatever, if that bet wins, no matter how short the odds are, you get $150 in bonus bets. That's 30-1 on something that could be like minus 5,000, some super heavy, favorite in a college basketball game or something like that. And assuming that it actually happens, you get 30-1 on that bet in bonus bets, $150 for one $5 win. So make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast, Town Hall Tuesday. It's got a ring. I like it. Thank you, Skip Drew. And Skip Drew's got a question coming up later in the mailbag, but first we're going to do one from Bradley Knorr, who asks, Brian Flores is known for making unique schemes that make the most of his players. We have 3 very good defensive ends in Grenard, Gink, and Turner. Do you think he might find a way to use them all on the field together a lot? So that's already a thing with if you got like 3 ends that you want on the field. And it was Patrick Jones last year who was playing fantastic football. And then it was toward the end of the last year when Dallas Turner started to get a little bit more comfortable. That was the 4 as a NASCAR package, and it's a 3rd down move. The problem is those guys just aren't big enough to be like interior players. They're good at what they do, but if you put them at like nose tackle, they're going to get doubled. They're going to get washed out. That's just not, why would you do that? Right. So you can kind of only do that in situations where they're going to pass, but those situations come up. That'll happen. Really the answer to like, how do you there's like central anxiety of this question, for lack of, I can't think of a better word than that, but kind of the central idea of the question is, hey, we have 3 players that we like, assuming you aren't really mad about Dallas Turner rookie snaps, which you shouldn't be if you're an everydayer. All right. We've evolved. But okay. So we got 3 players, but there's only 2 starting spots. What do? And the answer is to rotate, which is why a group can be made of all good players, and then they all eat into each other's snap counts and make each other look worse. And that's not a them problem. That's a problem with the stat you're using. You know what I mean? Like, take, for example, a team that has, just insanely deep at edge. They've got 5 players that all could be starters on other teams. And that's not unheard of. The Eagles have had a couple groups like that. You could argue they had one this year, and they won the Super Bowl. So if all 5 of those guys are good, someone is the 5th best, right? Someone has to be. And that person's going to get 300 snaps all year, and you're going to go, is that guy a bust? That's a you problem, if that is the conclusion you came to from that. So personally, I prefer to watch them and decide if they are good on the plays that I can see of them or not. And for my money, yeah, they kind of went 5 for 5. Jihad Ward was fine. He was inconsistent, and I think he rightfully ended up last on that depth chart by the end of the year. But he didn't not have flashes, right? Like, he had his moments. And Dallas Turner had ascended to basically directly backing up Van Ginkel, while Patrick Jones directly backed up Grenard. And they would kind of rotate those 2 guys with each other, like, accordingly. But you would not very often get, like, Dallas Turner across from Van Ginkel or Grenard across from Pat Jones. They would mess with that, but it would be a much rarer package. But that's more like a stylistic thing. The point is, rotate them. Have them eat into each other's snap counts. Have everybody only play 700 snaps. That's beautiful. That's great. They're going to be so fresh. Everybody's going to be the freshest. They're going to be the freshest legs on the field in the 4th quarter. That becomes an advantage, even though they aren't on the field as often. It's generating a different kind of advantage that compensates for that cost. No. Okay, but it's spelled Neaux. So I am hearing it in like an Australian accent. Do you guys do that when you see like no, and it sounds, is that offensive? I'm sorry if it's offensive, but I'm only a little sorry. You're fine. You're Australian. Who, after seeing how much success Jayden Daniels had with Washington this season, what is your take on how new developments in VR helped him to be able to adjust quickly to the NFL and process plays? And should we expect similar results from JJ? Second part first, I have no idea what the Vikings like embracing of VR is, but what I will say is everyone's brain is different. And when it comes to like something like VR, that's not a new technology. I believe Teddy Bridgewater used that here. So that's definitely not like on the cutting edge. VR's been around for a while. But if your mind is not the kind of mind that works that kind of thing helps, don't use it, right? And that's not even like a learning styles or a personality thing. I think that's genuinely like, there are visual learners, there are tactile learners, there are auditory learners, there are different kinds of learners. And what if you're not that kind? So I don't know if the Vikings are going to use it, but I have a lot of faith that if it's right for him, they will. And if it's not, that they won't, that they'll like be deferential about that. I also, Jayden Daniels was the best quarterback coming out of college. Long time, everydayers new. So, draft takes. Max Garcia asks, considering last year's loaded QB class in a year where the Vikings needed one, and this year's loaded D-line class in a year where the Vikings need one, do you think Kwesi and the scouting team are planning this in advance? This is always going to be part of it. There's a lot of luck in that. I think every team to some degree has that awareness. So if you pulled a full Watergate in the TCO studio, which I'm not recommending that you do, all right, lawyers, I am not saying one way or another whether or not you should pull a Watergate in TCO Performance Center, okay? I'm remaining agnostic on that issue. But if you were to do so and you find all their draft stuff, you will find scouting reports on sophomores, on freshmen that played enough, on obviously juniors and seniors and everybody coming out. So they have awareness of what they think of next year's class, position by position or whatever. And yes, that absolutely factors into decisions. It's one of a billion things that factors into decisions. But it's also like a matter of luck, It's if Kirk Cousins' Achilles got torn 1 year earlier, they could have ended up drafting in the 2023 class and trying to vie for, CJ Stroud or something like that. They could have ended up in a totally different situation if he tore his Achilles in 2021. And what if the Vikings were in the 2022 class and we would be talking about Kenny Pickett, So it's just, some of that is just randomness, and sometimes it aligns for you, and sometimes it, the guy that got hurt and that you need to replace now, or the guy that, retired and you need to replace now, just so happens to be of a class that isn't good this year coming out or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you try to navigate it the best you can. I've got a few more questions. A couple of them are even about football. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Moving right along here with Town Hall Tuesday on the Locked On Vikings podcast. The next one comes from Nate Jelson, who asks, what is your favorite form of counter? Oh, baby. You're going to get me going. So the answer to this is going to be different level to level. At the pro level, there is a very good reason that GY counter is the most popular. Way more popular than GT counter. You do not see a lot of GT counter in the NFL, at least right now. It's not in fashion, is what I'll say. GT, guard, tackle, GY, guard, tight end. It's describing who the pullers are on counter, which usually has two pullers. So the reason you see more GY counter in the pros is because tight ends are really good, and so are defensive ends. NFL D linemen are insanely fast right now. It's probably safe to say that the biggest athletic disparity, and I'm talking full league wide, like macro level, the biggest positional disparity is D-line and O-line. And I think that's because when you're a kid and you're big and you're talented, you want to get the glory. D-line is a little flashier, a little more fun. O-line is not where you put that kid, and a lot of kids at younger levels, like youth football or like JV level, like if you are really athletic, you'll play like D end and wide receiver, right? Or end tight end or something like that. So the best athletes at that size level are getting funneled into D-line way more often than they're getting funneled into O-line, and that trickles up into a total crisis of O-line in the league, which we have right now. Complete crisis of O-line. Pass protection is a disaster league-wide everywhere, which factors into my takes about the O-line like not really being that bad, because it's actually everybody's doing that bad. And it's the best teams are the ones that figure out how to overcome it, not the ones that figure out how to fix it. There's like 2 teams every year that get to fix it, and good for them, but everybody else has to find a way. And so what that means is if you are in a division with, say, Max Crosby, Joey Bosa, Nick Bonito, and Chris Jones, right? Like that's your division. Okay, we cannot expect our tackle to get all the way across the formation faster than Joey Bosa can blow that play up. But we can ask the tight end to. He's a little quicker. But at the college level, guys, the talent disparity isn't that different. Because if you have an O-line that's made of a bunch of seniors and the other team has a D-line that's made of a bunch of sophomores, that you're going to have the advantage, and that will happen sometimes. So it's okay to ask your tackle to come across. And in the college ranks, that is also starting to trend the same way as the pro ranks. But once you get into high school, where athleticism's all over the place and it can be even and it can be lopsided one way or another, GT counter gets way, way, way more popular. And I think that that's all very appropriate. The other thing is like the sort of Zorro-like concepts with 2 skill players pulling across are similar to counter. I don't know if you would call them counter. I might get in trouble for even suggesting that they're counter, because Zorro is technically an outside zone play. But it does pull 2 guys across the formation, 2 skill players across the formation, whether it's like a fullback and a tight end, or 2 tight ends, and one is in motion and then the other one goes at the snap or whatever, is all, to me, window dressing. That the idea is still the same, where you're trying to get a numbers advantage by taking 2 guys on the right side and putting them on the left side, and it's just that it's 2 skills. I love that play. I think that's a great thing in today's day and age, but I don't think it can be a staple. It's a little bit too gimmicky, and ultimately those 2 guys aren't always going to win the double team against the good D end. So I don't think you can live that way. But so for me, it's GY at the pro level, And I don't think I'm on particularly controversial ground there. Skip Drew asks, was there a measurable difference in the special teams play this year without Najee Thompson? Oh my God. The punt gunning this year was so bad. It's not the kind of thing you get a lot of time to talk about game to game to game to game. But oh my God, did there be problems when it was Jay Ward or, God, who else even did it? Trent Sherfield was okay at it. And he was the only kind of redeeming quality. But otherwise, you had guys flashing down the field way too fast. You had guys overrunning it. You had guys just getting completely mugged. Punt gunning is a cool art. And it's something that maybe we should get Kevin Fielder back on the show. He's kind of my special teams guy, just to talk about the art of punt gunning and what to look for on a punt gun. They're very fun to watch. If you just want to like hone in on them once or twice, get a sense for like what you're supposed to be looking like, read like one basics article or something like that. You could probably Google that and find it, and then just like watch and get a sense. It's pretty fun to watch punt gunning, to be honest. And it's always, it's accessible because there's only like 8 of them in a game and then you're good. So, man, but yeah, oof, boy, rough. Last couple are less football related, but I wanted to take anyways because you all were curious. The first one comes from Ties Don't Matter, who asks, just downloaded Blue Sky. Who are the Vikings accounts to follow? So on Blue Sky, which is now the only social media that I'm like on. If you have been looking for me on Twitter and not finding me, yeah, I had deleted that. I nuked every social media like from teenagerdom as part of a, I don't know, like a move, like a Marie Kondo move. I don't know. It started at the end of the season. It's like, oh, let's take a little social media break. I'll like deactivate things. I'll like try to, be more present in the world around me. And then I was like, Twitter doesn't have like a professional value the way it used to because of the link suppression stuff that they do. Read an article if you're not familiar. But so, and like personally, the value of Twitter has gone down quite a bit for me. Like I just don't get enjoyment out of it. And so I was like, well, I don't need to be on this platform anymore. So I kind of allowed that to become permanent. And then that started to expand to everything, to Facebook and to Reddit and like everything. So I've nuked every social media post I've ever had more than 6 months old. And that feels great. Anyways, on Blue Sky, they have a lists feature. If you go to there's like a tab that you can go to that's like lists, and you can look up Vikings, and people have made like starter packs that have, names like me, like Strip Reporters, Arif, everybody who's on there that you probably remember from Twitter. If you're coming from Twitter over to Blue Sky, everybody who's like has come over is part of that list, and that'll get you started. And hopefully through those people, you'll see them interacting with the other people that you remember that maybe weren't on that list, and you can kind of search everybody out from there. And eventually we'll all find each other on the news site again. P. Circo? I have no idea. Cicero asks, what did you think of the Super Bowl halftime show? Look, the Locked On is not a place to get political, but I did think that the symbolism of that was a pretty bold choice for a halftime show. But what is art? Like art and sports are both reflection of culture. They are not apolitical things at all. Anybody who thinks sports is an apolitical thing, I've got some stories to tell you about Jesse Owens. But art, and especially music, has held, I think, a much more visible place in like politics, right? The anti-war songs of Vietnam and all that stuff. And I think that halftime show, I mean, look, Kendrick Lamar's work has always been, he's never shied away from making those kinds of statements. But it's never quite been that overt to me. It's always been a little bit more shrouded in symbolism. So I thought that was an interesting choice. I respect it for sure. And I like Kendrick Lamar, so I enjoyed it quite a bit. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Vikings. I will see you all tomorrow. And we'll talk about something. I have no idea what. We'll figure it out. Love you. And as always, let's go